Yo, it's JJONSOME, and today we're gonna reacting to the 9 worst ways to die in history. Like, whew. Nah, bro. I don't know. Maybe getting shot for me. Maybe jumping out like a building. That has to be for me. But let's get to the vid. Let's see what's about to happen.
Your chances of survival in the past would be 0. The moment you were suspected of arson in Rome, you'd be turned into a living torch. And during the Renaissance, you'd be torturing yourself with parasite worms to wear luxurious clothing. Being suspected of a crime in 16th century England, or even worse, in ancient Persia, would guarantee you absolutely hellish punishments. These types of torture are exactly what I'm going to tell you about in today's video, so viewer discretion is advised. Never again will you be able to enjoy the colorful flashes of Roman candles, since you're about to find out the origin of their name. In 64 AD, a capricious and cruel emperor, Nero, threw a loud party in Rome. Everything was in the best traditions of that time. Lots of wine, naked people, bread, and circuses.
Sounds like a Diddy party up in there. Naked people just going around in parties. That used to be a thing back in the day. Like, you pull up to the party, we naked today. You know, clothes. I don't think a lot of people could do that nowadays, bro. Too many freak balls.
However, the latter were horrific. On the eve of the party, a fire broke out in the city. It went on for 6 days and destroyed 10 out of 14 districts, leaving thousands of citizens homeless and killing hundreds of innocent people. Rumor had it that Nero himself had ordered to set Rome on fire. To silence these rumors, the tyrannical emperor pinned the arson on adherents of other faiths, including Christians. They were arrested, thrown into prisons, and tortured. Yet it wasn't enough for the savage Nero, so he came up with something called Roman candles. The prisoners were wrapped in crude fiber, coated with highly flammable materials like tar, oil, and wax, and set alight, serving as living candles. The insane Nero lit his grand parties in this way, and his perverted guests sought entertainment in human suffering. I can't call this justice, but 4 years after this, there was an uprising against Nero. The emperor realized what his fate would be, so he committed suicide, not to experience the suffering he'd inflicted upon others. The next reason why you wouldn't...
Yeah, bro, that is insane. You go that far, like, on thousands of people, too. Probably innocent people won't do that. Light them on fire as so-and-so candles. Like, they're Roman candles. That's what we call them. Like, that is crazy. Burning alive for everyone in the view. People are like, yeah. Like, what's going on?
Have survived in the past is witchcraft accusations. You said the earth rotated around the sun, that disease could be treated with medicines and not prayers. Or, God forbid, everything was going well in your life. You're definitely a sorcerer. That's the reputation that followed a Scottish aristocrat named William de Sully. He allegedly communicated with spirits and even defeated a giant. For these crimes, in 1321, he was sentenced to an execution method so brutal that it was officially used only several times in the entire history. The poor man was thrown into a giant cauldron on fire and boiled to death. And almost 100 years later, Scottish lords used this same method to kill Sheriff John Melville because he was too strict, demanding that everyone follow the rules. They say that after the execution, every lord drank a spoonful of liquid from that cauldron. These same savage execution methods were used for forgers and murderers in the Roman Empire, as well as in medieval Europe. We can still see the cauldron used to execute those who forged money on the wall of a house in the Dutch town of Deventer. The convicts were boiled in oil. Boiling was also used to execute a robber gang leader in Japan. In the US, there was a case of using the same kind of punishment for disobedience. However, a truly unique case happened in England.
That is insane. Boiling in oil? Yo, that might be up there with that bull, the Red Bull. When they light you on fire in an iron bull and you just like lay inside there and get heated up. Like, yo. Jesus.
England.
And knowing you, there's probably like the people that put you in there, they probably have to watch you and wait for you to die. They're hearing you suffer. Like, jeez, that's intense.
1531, a cook, Richard Roos, who worked for the household of the Englishman John Fisher, Bishop of Rochester, added something to the food and poisoned 2 people. Then the furious bishop pressured the king, and the monarch did the same with the parliament. As a result, they adopted an ad hoc law that officially allowed to boil people alive for a poisoning attempt in England. In addition, it didn't require any public trial. In fact, this law was only adopted to allow them to boil the cook legally. However, it's no less terrifying that, reportedly, torture by boiling is still in use in the modern world. In 2002, reports surfaced about the deaths of 2 prisoners in a facility in Uzbekistan. Their bodies had burns that could only have appeared from being dipped in boiling water. Of course, the local authorities didn't confirm these scary rumors. In addition, in a 2010 documentary, a masked man claimed that in Mexican cartels, traders are thrown into cauldrons with boiling oil. To distract ourselves from these horrors,
yeah, man, them cartels, they do all types of stuff. Like, I feel like some of the things that happened back in the day, the cartels be topping it. They'll pluck your eye out, break your limb, cut your limb off, and just do a big strut. I don't know what's wrong. Cut you open. Like, what is wrong with the cartel? Like, I'm sorry I shorted you a zip, bro. Just relax. At least put a bullet through my head, bro. You're doing too much. Relax, bro. Stop. Let these people just go out, man. You're doing too much.
Suggest we get transported into the Victorian era, the time of exquisite, magnificent balls, during the reign of Queen Victoria. However, this beautiful exterior was hiding truly horrific things. Because back then, unhealthy beauty standards demanded women to have 40-centimeter waists, as well as crimson lips, pale skin, and a skinny build. That is, a woman had to look like she was suffering from tuberculosis. The poor ladies were willing to do anything to reach the unhealthy ideal. They even tortured themselves with their own hands. One of the most disgusting methods they resorted to was the consumption of parasite worms. To be more precise, the women swallowed pills with tapeworm eggs. The eggs hatched into worms and reached 10 meters in length and absorbed a significant share of nutrients from the food the victims consumed. The ads for the product promised the women that they'd be able to eat however much they wanted and stay thin with no damage to their health whatsoever. Of course, that was a lie. The infected women felt horrible, and it only got worse. First, the worm leached onto an intestinal wall, damaging the mucous membrane and weakening blood flow. This caused abdominal pain, acid reflux, and nausea. As the parasite kept growing, its waste products filled the body with toxins, damaging the liver and the immune system. The poor women developed constant headaches, general fatigue, and dizziness. Eventually, the worms would absorb virtually important nutrients from the infected woman's body, and she'd experience rapid weight loss and anemia. This, in turn, could cause heart failure and deadly consequences. However, women of the Victorian era didn't die of parasite worms. Instead, they died trying to get rid of them. To get the tapeworm out, a special trap was invented and patented. First, the woman had to endure 4 to 5 days without eating, and what ensued was not for the weak of heart. A piece of cheese was placed inside the trap. Then, it was tied to a rope, and the woman had to swallow it so that it went down to the stomach. According to the idea, the hungry tapeworm had to pounce on the food and get stuck in the trap. The woman would supposedly feel this moment, and the parasite would be yanked out. The trap was made from pure gold, probably to make it even more luxurious. However,
who in their right mind thought this would work? I don't care. Maybe they didn't know a lot about like health and all that. But let's be real. No one is that dumb to think, okay, we're going to put this little trap inside of you. We're going to shove this down your throat. Okay, tell me when the tapeworm goes in there, we're going to yank it out. Like, come on. If my doctor told me that, if I'm one of these girls, the doctor told me that, hey, yeah, your tapeworm, we're going to get that all right. We can get that fixed for you. Just open your mouth. We're gonna dump this in your mouth, bro, in your throat. Okay, all the way in your stomach. While completely awake, by the way. And we're gonna pull it out. You're gonna be good. Yo, I'm gonna look at him like these. Like, I'm just gonna get up and leave, bro. We gotta find something else, because this is crazy.
This didn't change the fact that the contraption blocked the woman's airways, and the poor things simply died of asphyxiation. Those lucky enough to survive weren't rid of the tapeworms because those parasites live exclusively in the bowels. So after all these tortures, the Victorian woman would go through yet another humiliating and pointless trial. She would try to lure the parasite out by placing a glass of milk near her open mouth and the other end of the digestive tract. Luckily for us, modern culture is starting to accept all the natural body shapes and popularize a healthy lifestyle. So if someone says there's something wrong with the way you look, you can wish them a pleasant journey back to ancient Persia. It'll be a bit too harsh, however, since it was the birthplace of one of the most horrific punishments of all time: Skiffism. The victim was tied between two boats. Then he was coated with and forcefully fed milk and honey. This part may not sound all that scary, but what ensued was literal hell. Firstly, the convict's face and limbs were instantly covered with insects that continuously bit and stung them. Secondly, this kind of diet caused severe diarrhea. Inside the boat, the person's waste provided the perfect environment for parasites, bugs, and worms that started eating the victim alive. The first mention of Skiffism was recorded in 401 BC. Then, the king of the Persian Empire used this method to execute a warrior for killing his brother. Before passing, the convict had suffered for 17 days. It was rare, even for insane tyrants, to use such a lengthy torture method. However, the rulers of ancient states were often excessively inventive in the punishment area. For example, one of the execution methods used across...
That is crazy. That's probably the worst one yet.
A significant part of Asia was gungareo, which involved dying under the feet of elephants. This type of torture was used to punish people for a wide variety of crimes, from tax evasion to participating in mutinies. Therefore, the punishment itself varied, since the elephants were specifically taught different tricks. The elephant's handler, responsible for overseeing the torture, sat atop its back. In rare instances, criminals were thrown into an arena with an uncontrollable animal and pardoned if they managed to tame the elephant. For Akbar the Great, the ruler of the Mughal Empire, resorting to the gungareo punishment was an act of grace of sorts. His elephants were trained to push and roll the convicts so as not to inflict severe trauma. After several days of such torture, the victims, battered but alive, were sometimes set free. However, the overwhelming majority of gungareo use instances were much more cruel and served the purpose of execution. The elephants were taught to grab the victims with their trunks and crush their limbs one by one. And when the ruler gave the finish sign, the elephant would stand on the convict's chest, or even his head. That's around 4 tons of weight. However, there was something worse. The elephants were turned into killing machines. The executioners would attach swords to the animal's tusks, and their legs were covered with sharp iron spikes, just like in this movie. When this ironclad elephant was released to the convict, the animal would wrap its trunk around the victim and throw them high into the air. When the poor person hit the ground, the elephant would grab them with its teeth and throw them under its feet. Then, the animal would do what the ruler told it to do. This execution method remained in use until the early 19th century. However, sadly, gungareo was far from the only savage punishment practice preserved for so long. One of the most barbaric practices in the entire history of humankind was used in countless modern developed countries of Europe and Asia up to the 18th and 19th centuries. I'm talking about the breaking wheel. I'll try to be as discreet as possible when describing this absolutely horrific torture method, but I believe you have the right to know what was happening worldwide just 150 years ago. So first, the convict was tied to an X-shaped cross, and their largest bones were crushed in 2 places. This was done to ensure that the body would be able to bend unnaturally. Then, the victim was placed on a horizontally positioned wheel so that their body would leave no gaps inside the wheel. This method was used to punish people for robbery, arson, sexual crimes, murder, and of course, high treason. However, this doesn't negate the fact that the breaking wheel torture was nothing but an act of absolutely barbaric atrocity. It didn't even have the cover-up of the usual ritualistic conventions, such as sacrifice to a deity. I want to stress once again that I'm only telling you about all these horrific things because they were a part of history. Humanity had its dark times that nobody in their right mind would even consider approaching. The people who lived back then, on the other hand, had a completely different outlook on everything. That's exactly why virtually none of us...
Bro, that's why I be thinking, like... Maybe, I would like to say it's easier nowadays because what people were doing back then is just insane. Common things that usually people do nowadays, like studying, reading, you know, like the video said, knowing that there's some health things or plants or concoctions you could put together to better your health. That was like witchcraft. So you get hanged and do all this crazy shit. By far the worst one has to be the one when they put you in the boat and you drink honey and milk and the bugs eat at you. And you're stinky and having diarrhea, like, ugh, you're done. Like, that is so bad. Oof. There's one that didn't get mentioned, the Red Bull. I don't know if they're going to mention that one. Oh, they have one more. Oh,
Viking society. Their findings were blood-chilling. But first, let's find out what the blood eagle even is. It's when the victim was laid stomach down on a table or a raised platform, and then all of his ribs were severed from the spine with a knife. Then, the ribs were opened to the sides, creating wings. And in the end, the executioners pulled out the victim's lungs. From a medical point of view, however, this procedure is highly complex. First, the executioners would need to cut...
Why? Why though? Like, why? Who thinks to do that? That person's probably alive when you're cutting it up. I'm not gonna lie. You're cutting up the back. You're pulling out the ribs. They're probably alive at that point. When they touch the lungs, I'm not gonna lie. You probably bled out by then, so you're good. Well, I don't want to say you're good, but like you're dead. You don't have to go through the pain anymore. That is insane.
Cut through the muscles and then the bones. In addition, they'd have to somehow keep the lungs intact. When scientists used a computer simulation to test this, they found that the Vikings could hardly have performed this ritual without the victim dying before its end. Any crude and long blade would have inflicted injuries that would have killed the person almost instantly. However, historians believe the Vikings could have used short spears to avoid such an outcome. Luckily, there are only 2 mentions of this execution method being used. Both times, it was a case of ritualistic blood revenge. The first use of the blood eagle was...
That's some junk you pray to Baal or something, and then, hey, that nigga tells you, that demon tells you, hey, bro, you got to do the blood eagle for me to do whatever you want me to do. That's the price. Blood eagle, random person. Because there's no need to do this. just kill me, bro. Alright, just kill me, bro. You just stop with all this freaky, weird shit. Just kill me.
When a Viking leader named Ivar the Boneless executed the king of Northumbria.
Ivar the Boneless.
In 867 for the murder of his father. The second instance was in the 9th century when Torf Einar, a Scandinavian jarl, did the same thing with Halfdan Longleg, the son of Norway's first king. Moreover, this ritual execution was also the designated revenge for the...
Bro, yeah. Alright, bro. This is JJONSOME, bro. Like and subscribe. This is crazy. It's road to 100 subs, so sub up, like up. See you in the next one.